All right, we're going to get started on section 11.5. This section is dealing with something called expected value. I want to give you a feeling for it. I just think it's much easier to remember and understand things if you have a little background. Okay, so I'm going to use this picture right here for just a minute. Let me make it a little smaller. All right, so let's imagine we're flipping a coin 4 times. So we could draw a tree diagram. So I've gone ahead and drawn the tree diagram to come up with all the possible results, all the possible outcomes. So like if we rolled it 4 times, we could get 4 H's. Or for instance, we could get 4 heads, or we could get 1 tail followed by 3 heads, etc. Okay. So here you see all the possibilities. If you count them up, there's 16. Let's see if I can get it to write on this, where I need to go. All right. Sorry, it's not, my pen is not writing on it, and I think it's because I've got to snip it first. Let me try that. All right, so let me see if I can write on it now. Yeah. All right, so here we have 16 possible results, 16 outcomes you could have after flipping a coin 4 times. And you've got them all there in front of you. All right, and then what we're going to consider is the number of heads. And so I just wrote a column where I wrote down how many heads we got in each of those different outcomes. All right. So you see 4, or we might have 3 heads, or like here, there's only 1 head. Here, there's 2, and so on. All right. What we're going to do is make a little chart that we're going to use later. I'm going to let X be the number of heads we got in a result. And what we're going to do is think a little bit about the probability of getting no heads, 1 head, 2 heads, 3 heads, or 4 heads. Okay. All right. So when you're looking at this, do you see how there's only one outcome that where you didn't get any heads? So that's one possibility. I wish this were a little bigger. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. Yeah. That's one possibility out of the 16 possibilities. Okay. All right. And then to get 1 head, we can see here's 1. Okay. Let me do it in a different color. Okay. So here's 1. Here's another, and another. So there were 4 of those out of the 16 possibilities. So that turned out to be 1/4 when you simplify it. All right, let me change to green. So let's look at the probability of getting a 2. So here's a 2. Here's a 2. There's 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, 6 of them. So there's 6 outcomes that were 2. Okay, now this chart down here is a little bit scrunched up. I'm having trouble writing it, so I'll straighten it out later. Let me go out a little bit with it. So for 2, I'll do that in green. You had 6 outcomes that had 2 heads in them out of the 16, and that would wind up being 3/8 when you reduce it. Okay, and then number 1 head, that was 1/4, and then no heads I did in blue. Okay, see that? All right, so let's do 3 heads. So let me find another color. How about yellow? Okay, so 3 heads. Let's go back up here and look. So here's 3, 3, 3, 3. So that's 4 possibilities out of the 16. Turns out to be another 1/4. And the possibility that all of them would be heads, let me just do that one in black. Okay, we only have that 1 possibility. So what we're creating right now is called a probability distribution. It's like a chart where you're listing the probability of each of those results happening. Okay. All right. So we're going to use this in just a minute to talk a little bit about something called expected value. So let me get that sheet pulled up so you can look at it. You should have this, by the way, printed from Canvas so that you can write on it as we talk through it. Okay. All right. So let's take a look. So the last section that we're supposed to go over before you were supposed to have a test on all of this was expected value and simulation. And we're really just pretty much doing the expected value portion. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started with it. So if you flip a coin 4 times, how many heads do you expect to get? 1, 2, 3, or 4? To determine this mathematically, we will find a kind of weighted average using values in the probability distribution in the table. Okay. So expected value is literally a weighted average, kind of like GPA is a weighted average. All right, so we're gonna think back to that chart, okay? And let me just write it here so it's right there in front of you. So we had, I'll spread it out a little bit. The probability of getting no heads was 1 out of 16. Probability of getting 1, if you remember back, let me find out where it is. There it is. Wait, where's the one I wrote on? Here it is. The probability of getting 1 head was 1/4. Okay. 2 heads was 3/8. Okay, and so on. So let me just get that information over here. So 1 head, that would be 1/4. Getting 2 turned out to be 3/8. Getting 3 was back to 1/4. And getting 4 was going to turn out to be 1/16 again. Okay. By the way, if you were to add all of those up, that would total 1. That the sum of all of those probabilities would be 1, because those are all of the options, all of the outcomes in the sample space. All right, so here's what you do with it. Here's how you do expected value. You take the outcome, which is getting no heads, times the probability of that happening, plus the outcome, which is 1 head, times the probability of that happening, and so on. The outcome of 2 heads times the probability of getting 2 heads. Okay, 3 heads times the probability of getting 3 heads, and then 4 heads times the probability of getting 4 heads. So the expected value would be what that turns out to be when you simplify it. So 0 times a 16th would be gone. This, by the way, you can just type in on your calculators. They will handle fractions for you, so don't freak out about the fractions. But that would be 0 plus a 4th. When you do this one, it turns out to be 6/8. This one, which reduces, okay, this one turns out to be 3/4. This one turns out to be 4/16, which also reduces, okay? So we're just going to add all of those up. And so like the 1/4 and the 3/4 would be 1 whole. And then you have 6/8, which is 3/4, and 4/16, which is 1/4, gives you another whole. So that totals up to be 2, all total. So the expected value would be 2. The expected value is like your mathematical expectation of the number of heads you would get if you flipped a coin 4 times. And what we just found is that the expected value, let me move that last thing over there. The expected value turned out to be 2. Now, does that make sense to you when you think about it? You know, you would expect, wouldn't you, if you flipped a coin 4 times, that you'd expect getting heads half the time and tails half the time. So you'd expect to get 2 heads, wouldn't you? So it'd be yes, half the time. You'd expect to get heads. So in 4 rolls, you'd expect maybe 2 heads and 2 tails. Of course, we saw in our table, though, didn't we, that you really have 16 other things, 16 possibilities, and you might not get any heads. It's not what you would expect, but it can happen. Don't forget about that law of large numbers. If you're only doing something a small number of